Now, starting January 1st, 2026, the Trump administration will expand its travel restrictions to include a total of 39 countries with a heavy focus on Africa. Now, the new order imposes a full ban on citizens from nations including Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger and South Sudan, while moving Sierra Leone to the full ban list. Additionally, major countries like Nigeria, Senegal and Tanzania now face partial restrictions, which significantly limits the availability of business, tourist, and even student visas. Now, the administration justifies these measures by citing security risks, claiming that these nations have poor identity tracking system and high rates of visa overstays. The crackdown follows a November 2025 shooting in Washington, D.C., leading to stricter vetting requirements for foreign nationals. Now, while those with existing green cards are generally permitted to enter, they should expect intense screening as well, and new applicants from the affected countries will find it nearly impossible to obtain entry to the U.S. Joining us to make sense of this are Abiodun Adeniyi, Professor of Communication in Bayes University, Abuja. And we also have Professor Adams Bodomo, Chair of Linguistics and Biodiversity at the University of Ghana. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, many thanks for having me.
So let me begin with Professor Adeniyi. Now, Professor, let's begin with the magnitude. When you look at the map, it is quite staggering because we've gone from 19 to 39 countries overnight. So is there any historical precedent for a superpower like the U.S. simply switching off diplomatic and personal travel, for such a massive portion of the human population?
Well, it's not really surprising if you look at the power equation between the acting country, the United States that is, and the countries that are being targeted. The power equation is very huge. United States is a very strong country, a very rich and prosperous, and of course, the main attraction, for migrants coming in from nations of the South, and particularly Africa. And of course, because of the dynamics of survival, these countries coming in from poorer countries of the South, particularly African countries, are more easily implicated, in the population of the underground economies of Western societies, where the United States is the main actor. And of course, oftentimes where allegations are going to come up, where suspicions are going to come up, where anxieties are going to arise around which sections of the world is constituting the criminal population of that kind of receiving country, which United States is, for instance, fingers are more likely going to be pointed at African countries. And if you also look at it again, you see that these countries identified are countries that are largely struggling at the level of economics and to some extent too at the level of political instability. So they're likely going to be the suspects, as the case could be. And do not forget again that we now have, an eccentric president of the United States, somebody who is not largely undiplomatic, who is very trenchant and frontal, and who likes to face things the way he wants to face it, irrespective of, the kind of regard that you ordinarily expect of in international relations. So that's why we're having these moves. But overall, what is more important is for independent nations, autonomous nations, sovereign nations, to be more introspective, to be more inward-looking, to be more concerned about growing their influence, and affluence, such that they can meet largely the yearnings and aspirations of their people, so that they can reduce the way in which they export hope, the way in which they externalize hope, thinking that it's only by migration, it is only by living in the prosperous Western nation that they can make ends meet, or that they can fulfill their life aspirations, as the case could be. I do not see the United States, for instance, coming up with this kind of regulation against countries that they are at par with, countries around which they are on the same horizon with. They can only deal with countries that are far below them, and countries that, even if they retaliate, in the first instance, they will not dare to retaliate. But even if there's a reciprocal action against the United States, it will just amount to sound, it will just be full of sound and fury and signifying nothing.
Okay. Now let's also hear from Professor Bodomo. Let's have your thoughts, because the administration is explicitly pointing to the November 26th shooting in D.C., involving an Afghan national as the catalyst. But that individual was already vetted. So if the most rigorous checks actually failed, how does banning a student from Senegal or Ghana or a tourist from Zambia solve a failure in U.S. domestic intelligence?
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Usman, and thank you to News Central TV for having me on your forum. You've tried several times to have me, but today we are together.
It's a pleasure, sir.
Yeah, in addition to being a chair of linguistics and biodiversity at the University of Ghana, I'm also a professor of African Studies at the University of Vienna. I just wanted to correct that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, this is a great issue. First of all, irrespective of whatever the Trump administration is doing, let me make a point before we do anything else. These kinds of things are a reminder that we in Africa have to unite and make our continent a better continent. In fact, our earliest leaders, our founding leaders, including Kwame Nkrumah, all the others, Nyerere, Tafawa Balewa, and all these people have always insisted on this kind of unity. If we had listened to them, and come together to make Africa a better place, no country, very few countries can do what they are doing to us. We are victims of these countries because we haven't put our house in order. Now, going back to the issue about the security issue, saying that we countries, or many of us countries in Africa, don't have enough security screening, it's just an excuse. It is an excuse, to do what they're doing. And so there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, however much we tighten our security, there will always be another reason. In fact, one reason they have is that many of us overstay when we go to the U.S. And the ratio of people who go there and those who overstay, that is one of the markers of the reasons they use to impose these restrictions. So it comes back to the thing that I'm saying at the beginning, that to forestall all this, we have to focus on what we are doing after African Continental Free Trade, remove visas, remove blocks that prevent us from going to each other country. So once we make Africa a huge playground for in terms of transportation, in terms of investments, everything, we will have a big market, and then we don't need so much to go to other parts of the world. If we make our continent a better place to be, if we build a better Africa, in fact, these other countries will dare not do this to us. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, let's come back to you, Professor Adeniyi. You've heard what Professor Bodomo has actually said. He said that they will still find excuses no matter what happens. So speak to us. By imposing full bans on Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the U.S. is severing ties automatically with the very regions, where it claims to be fighting extremism. So isn't the president essentially handing the keys to the Sahel to, Russian and even Chinese interests while he locks the door from the inside?
Yeah, I think there are indications to that, no doubt. But of course, you also know that in global politics, there will always be contradictions. And of course, in the policy directions of these powerful nations towards, less powerful nations, there will also be some reversals, some things that you may not necessarily be able to place your hands on. And this is actually one of them. And, you cannot rule out the fact that we're going to have some other countries trying to replace the influence of the United States in some of these countries where citizens are being prevented from traveling to their own country. The Russia is, for instance, on looking for influence in Africa. China is also there, and there are some other countries. India is there as well. Even Japan is not resting. And of course, interestingly, even Saudi Arabia at some point, they're becoming interested in making forays into Africa. So if even Turkey, for that matter. So we are seeing so many countries seeing Africa as a country, as a continent where they should have influence. And what this tells us is that we are a false or a fake darling of the world. We're a darling that is being sought after, not because they love us, not because we are respectable or reputable, but just because we are weak and vulnerable, and people rather think that they can take advantage of us. And that's why I said earlier that what's important is for our economic and power elites to be much more introspective. Development is not rocket science. It's not something that should drop from the sky. It's something that is that can be painstaking. If we can have more responsible leadership, across the continent and in specific African countries, of course, we can grow our respect, grow our well-being, beyond what it is, such that nations can look at us and probably think that they can be disrespectful of us, telling us into our face that we are being prevented from coming into their country. And, it's the height of disrespect, really. And rather than taking it as something we should worry about, or rather that we should just take it, as a call to action. What more can we do as a people to make ourselves more respectable? Can we begin to look more inward? Can we begin to look at our own downsides, and grow ourselves from those downsides? Can we strengthen our economies? Can we strengthen our politics? Can we grow our institutions? And can they be more responsive to the yearnings and aspirations of the people? Can we stop the unbridled exploitation of capital, to these Western societies where this capital is less needed in the first instance? Why, for instance, do we think that, we need to have a plan B in those countries? Why don't we make our own country a plan A, B, and C? Those are the kind of neo-colonial thoughts that we should begin to deal with if we have to navigate our way, from this kind of treatment in the future, as the case could be.
Okay. So I'm being told that Ejike Okpa has joined us. He is a global affairs analyst in Texas, USA. Thank you so much, Ejike, for your time.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let's hear from you, Ejike. Let's begin with, Nigeria. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy and a key security partner. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what's happening. And we know that now it is on the partial restriction list for B1, B2, and also student visas. So how does Washington expect to maintain a strategic partnership, when its business leaders and brighter students are being told that they are a security threat? Your thoughts?
Hey, let me say something here. Visa is like inviting somebody into your home. It's not a requirement. It's not a right. And what is going on is a failure. It's a failure of diplomacy. Excuse me. Let me get off my phone. This echo. Okay.
We're still with you. All right, so let me pass that question to Professor Bodomo. I don't know if would you like me to repeat the question?
What was the question again?
All right, we talked about Nigeria being Africa's largest economy and a key partner to the U.S. as well. And now they've been placed on partial restrictions, B1, B2, and also students' visa. But is it possible for Washington to expect to maintain a strategic partnership when business leaders and also brighter students are being told that they are a security threat and they cannot enter the U.S.?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think Washington is shooting itself in the foot. You know, you cannot expect to. Yeah, I mean, one cannot neglect a country like Nigeria and much of Africa. One cannot neglect this. So Washington is shooting itself in the foot in doing this. But then, yeah. We are not here to tell them what to do. We are here to tell ourselves what to do. Now, what is happening is that how are African countries reacting to this issue? What is happening is that some African countries are selectively going on what is called a quid pro quo approach to the whole problem. A quid pro quo approach in the sense that you do something to me and I do something. You give me something and I give you something. That is why some of these African countries are not so much affected. And so, but what we should be doing is that what is the African Union? What is ECOWAS, which is almost non-existent now because of the problems there? But what is the African Union doing? Can't we come together and say, how do we respond to this kind of thing? How do we collectively respond to this kind of behavior? Can we begin to strengthen our own internal institutions? I mean, if we are looking for markets in the US, in Europe, and there are problems like these visa restrictions, why don't we look inward and expand our market? We have the African Continental Free Trade organization or arrangement. Why don't we sit back, get back to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa, sit back and see how we can make this work? If we were able to do that, then we will not be having all these problems. I mean, like the opposition leader in South Africa said, Malema, he said that if I can travel free to Nigeria, if I can travel free to Ghana, to other parts of Africa, why do I need to worry so much about traveling to other parts of the world? So we are not here to. I go back to my beginning that the Washington is shooting itself in the foot in doing these things to a major country like Nigeria and to other African countries. But we are not there to correct them. We should be correcting ourselves. It is when we make ourselves respectable, as my other colleague, my co-panelist said, Adeniyi said, if we make ourselves respectable, if we strengthen our institutions, if we create a better Africa, these guys will begin to respect us and they will not do this to us as Washington is doing. Thank you very much.
All right. So do we still have Professor Adeniyi there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So still speaking of, the partial ban of Nigerian students and the rest. Nigerian students, we know, contribute billions to the U.S. economy and hold a 7% share of international student visas. So if, they're blocked from F, M, and J visas, where do they go? Are we watching the American dream, be exported to other universities in Toronto, London, or Shanghai?
No, it can be very painful at the personal level, at the level of the individual students concerned, because they've made projections, they have a focus in the United States, and of course they had plans. And sometimes when you want to go for some of these studies, you will probably have prioritized one country over the other. So in the case of these students, there must have been a reason why they prioritized the United States above all other countries. But again, if there is this kind of ban now, which you can describe as a force majeure, the only option left for them is to look elsewhere. And that's one thing. And of course, there are so many alternatives for them. There are so many fantastic, very good universities in Africa, and of course, even across Europe and the Americas as well. But we also need to understand that this is a decision by a country that feels that even if they lose this number of countries coming to their to their borders, coming through their borders, it's not going to affect them. So I want to believe that the American government have probably possibly thought about this very thoroughly, and they know that if it is something that they can do away with, then of course they should go ahead with it. Remember, some few years ago, United Arab Emirates also dealt with Nigeria in different ways, banning airlines, Nigerian airlines from coming to that country. You know, that was against the background of the fact that Nigerian traders prioritized Dubai. So much capital was being taken to Dubai, but that country never looked at those, you know. So it's about looking at costs, benefits, and losses. You probably will be thinking that these people are coming to your country. Yes, they are bringing in so much capital, but there's more disadvantage in their coming than advantage, you know. So we are going to look at these things, alongside each other. But while doing so, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact of the leader that we presently have in the United States, somebody that is slightly unusual, you know, that is concerned about protectionism, about exceptionalism, and that prioritizes America first, however he wants to define it. So it's a domestic policy that he's pursuing, and of course he's got our rights on behalf of his country, and the best we can do, like I've said, and like my colleague, my professor colleague from Ghana also said, is that it's an opportunity for us to look inwards and make the best of our own situation, even though we know that we are in an increasingly globalized world where countries cannot do without themselves. Okay.
Now, let's come back to Ejike Okpa. I'm told that he has joined us. Ejike, let's have your thoughts on all of this, being that you're in the U.S., especially, you know, the family cost, because Professor Adeniyi did say, you know, it's painful on a personal level, because this is really a very, very painful part, the family cost, because the proclamation removes exceptions for the spouses and children of U.S. citizens. Are we now at a point where an American citizen's right to live with their family depends entirely on the risk score of their spouse's country of birth?
Okay, I have to apologize for technology malfunction that I'm experiencing this morning. But, you know, be that as it may, I don't agree with Abiodun, because let's even go back to history. Nigeria kicked out Ghana back in the 1980s and the Second Moscow. Every country has a right to admit whomever they want. It's a privilege, it's not a right. I also agree that, you know, the people that are being rejected, they have to do something for their own country. We are not required to go anywhere. If your country is good, if you're going somewhere else, you might be for vacation, or you want to voluntarily migrate. So don't talk about Trump as if Trump is unusual. He's the president of America, and he's entitled to do whatever he's doing. You haven't even talked about what is Tinubu doing. Has Tinubu reached out to the president and said, why are you targeting Nigeria? What can we do? So you know, for you to sit over there and say, oh, Trump is this, Trump is that, I find it offensive because I'm an American citizen by choice. I was born and raised in Nigeria. What we need to do is get our house in order for us to be a guest that are welcomed in somebody's house. That's what it is. Immigration is a privilege, it's not a right. And when you are rejected, then there's a reason for it. Then you ask me the question, why am I being rejected? And then somebody could say, this is what you need to do. This is a Nigeria, it's not a West African issue, it's not an African issue. Nigeria has a partial restriction, not a permanent restriction. So let's focus on Nigeria. Ghanaians have their own issue, Sierra Leoneans have their own issue. But this is not a death sentence. You know, it can be resolved. Nigeria doesn't even have an ambassador to the U.S. since Tinubu has been in office. So what does that say about Tinubu's interest in promoting relationship with America?
All right, Ejike, still on you.
May I come in here? I mean, my colleague from America, if I understood him well, he said something like, this is a Nigerian issue, this is not an African. I completely disagree. This is a collective African issue. If we begin to think that these are just, this is a Nigerian problem, and this is a Ghanaian problem, and this is a South African, then we'll never solve any problem. It is a collective African issue.
It's not an African issue. It is a collective.
All right, gentlemen.
For example, when before coming to this forum, I put this thing on my social media, and an African said this: is this even worth discussing? What a waste of time. Build your damn countries, which are paradises. I mean, all of these African countries are paradises if we build them well. So collectively, if we come together, we will not be having these individual country issues. So I completely disagree that what is happening is a Nigerian issue, it's a Ghanaian issue, it's a Tanzania. No, this is a collective African issue. To solve this problem, to address this issue, we need to speak with one voice. That's my opinion.
No, you don't.
All right, Ejike. Gentlemen, we all have our opinions. We all have our opinions, and not one is better than the other. Please, can we move forward from that? Ejike, we're still on you. We're also hearing from veteran groups, who are horrified that the special immigrant visa, that's the SIV exception for Afghan allies, has been deleted. These are people who bled for the U.S. military in the U.S. Is the U.S. now declaring its own wartime allies unvettable?
The U.S. is not doing any of those. In fact, like I said, what Trump has done is not a blanket treatment. Certain countries were picked, some were partial restriction, some were full restriction. So let's talk about that specific country. What happened that Ghana, Sierra Leone, Sahel are included? If ECOWAS wants to pick up that, let them go do it on behalf of this country. But even though we live in a global village, there are still individual countries, and you have to protect your sovereign rights. That is where the president or the diplomatic corps of each country need to now engage America. Yes, collective responsibility is good, but if all of you are weak, it doesn't really matter. Nigeria can step up on behalf of Nigeria first. Take care of your home before you take care of your neighbor. So, this thing, I don't even think you should generate an extended conversation. It is something every country should go and take on and then find what it is that you are restricting people from my own particular country. Don't talk about Ghana, don't talk about Nigeria, specifics.
All right, now let's go back to Professor Bodomo. Professor Bodomo, let's talk about, the doors closing for the middle class, because the administration is launching a $5 million platinum card for residency. So what are your thoughts on this? Doesn't this create a deeply cynical reality where a security risk from a banned nation suddenly disappears if you have enough cash to pay the U.S. Treasury?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Miss Osman. Yes, you are addressing the central issue of what we say in international IR, that countries have interests, right? Not necessarily enemies, or a permanent enemy. They have permanent interest. What is happening is that, yes, as I said at the beginning, it was just an excuse, to say that, our security issues are not, we don't have enough screening and all those kind of things, or that many of our citizens stay longer in the U.S. And now, suddenly, it doesn't even now matter if you are in the middle class or even in the top class, because these visa restrictions, these green cards and other, money-based visas and residence permits are not just only for middle class, but for top class people. If you are from any of these countries that are being restricted and you have money, you can come. So you are hitting the point about special interest. These countries have special interest, and if we shouldn't be analyzing and trying to analyze and see their point of view and what they're doing, We should come back home again. I will just keep on hitting at this point. What I will say is that this is an auspicious moment. In fact, it is a blessing in disguise that we find ourselves in this kind of. It is just a reminder once more to the fact that we should not joke with continental African unity. We should not joke with unity. We collectively did house cleaning, and we collectively strengthened the African continental free trade arrangement. If we remove barriers, I cannot stress this enough, that if we keep our house clean, if we make our house better, we will be able to ride, the storm that we are getting from Washington. If we did this, for example, why is Trump not imposing anything on China, for example? Because China has made his house, cleaned his house. China has done things that makes it strong internally. The population of China is just an Africa, I guess about the same. If we saw ourselves as one entity, despite all these 54 dysfunctional countries, if we saw each other as one entity and we did things with that kind of mentality, we will soon have a very huge market. We will have a continent, we will have a federation, even a confederation that can begin to let other people see what we're doing and begin to respect us. If we had a continental unity, Trump and any other person would not be doing what they're doing to us. Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to Professor Adeniyi. Professor Adeniyi, we know that diplomacy is usually a two-way street. Should we expect, African countries or the African Union or the ECOWAS to respond with reciprocal bans as well? Could we see American business travelers or government officials being barred from Lagos or Nairobi in a tit-for-tat visa war?
You can see I'm smiling, in diplomacy as well, you look at power equation, you look at the strength of individual nations. It will be impolitic and, of course, disingenuous for countries who have been banned to say that they want to reciprocate against the United States, for instance, because these two countries are just incomparable in terms of strength, whether economic or political strength, and in terms of global influence as well. So what these countries would rather do at the level of wisdom and the level of maturity and intelligence is to momentarily elevate themselves above the provocation, above the irritation of ban, and of course dig into diplomacy. More diplomacy. Diplomacy can actually be inexhaustible. Inexhaustible. There are so many dimensions to it, and of course, I expect that they will go through the entire dimensions, not necessarily begging, not necessarily going and begging, but of course, being smart about it, engaging with the United States on the reason why they shouldn't be on that list, and of course, there has to be empirical facts, maybe trade benefits, the kind of impacts, interactions with global interactions with these countries have been bringing into the country that is receiving it, for instance. Facts like that can be played up with figures and all of that, and it might see reason. And again, it's been said here in this show that it's not something that is permanent. It's something that's usually that is temporal. It can come now and again as a tool for countries to be reminded of what they should do when they are failing to do it. So I do not expect any of these countries to retaliate. What are you retaliating for? I mean, it's going to be like an ant trying to, impact an elephant. It's not going to go anywhere. And this is not being saying that America is God, but of course we know how bullish it can be, and that might even provoke them further. So we should just be elevated above the irritation and dig into diplomacy so that we can achieve the mandate you probably want to achieve.
All right. So, we just have a few more minutes. Let's come back to Ejike while we have his thoughts, his final thoughts. Ejike, tourism analysts actually project a $29 billion loss in visitor spending due to these, friction policies. So in an era of economic America first, how does losing $30 billion in high-value tourism and student fees make the country stronger?
When you talk about losses, you have to talk about what is the percentage of. So, if you eliminate the African tourist money and the students' money, what does that do to the overall tourist, revenue that America gets? The whole thing here is, if any time somebody says no to you, it's an opportunity to say, why are you saying no? Can we talk? This is what is required. It's not to feel rattled, to feel that you have been discriminated and all of that stuff. Again, because even within African countries, Africans don't even accept each other. Those facts are there. What I'm saying is that when we make it an individual country effort, maybe if Nigeria were to engage America and achieve success, then Nigeria can turn around and go to other countries and say, this is what we do. You could copy and paste. But when you now throw in a blanket, they don't like us. Who cares? When I was leaving Nigeria for America, my father tell me this: you are leaving a tribalistic country to a racist one. You have a choice to make. You could stay back here and people who look like you, who don't like you, will kill you. Or you go to a place where you have to find out how to survive. And I've been here since 1987. I ran for mayor, I ran for Congress. I don't care when people don't like me. If you don't like me, I do you a favor. I don't like you. But I have to hold myself in such a way that at least I get respect. When Africans leave their country, they're not going on behalf of their country. They're going as individuals. So when you come here, you become a goodwill ambassador on behalf of yourself, your family, and the country you represent. And when things happen, engage. This is also telling that the Nigerian organizations in America are not effective. When Obasanjo came in, they created the diaspora organization. For something like this is where they could have stepped up, engaged Congress, engaged the State Departments, sent letters to the White House and said, hey, what is going on here? Is this something we can do? We are Americans. Well, we happen to have the ancestry and the heritage of being Nigerians. I'm not an African. I have a specific country I came from. So when things are being thrown out, Africa, no. Even Kwame Nkrumah, the reason Kwame Nkrumah lost Ghana is because he was more concerned about Pan-Africanism than he was concerned about securing Ghana. Secure the plate before you go for the pan. Dignity is when you manage yourself.
So sorry.
No. Okay, what I'm saying is that this is not the end of the road for any of those countries. You have to engage. There are people of your nationals that are here, say, what can you guys help us do? And how do we move forward? And, Nigeria will still be able to redeem itself. But again, if you don't have an ambassador here for 2 years since Tinubu came in, what does that say about diplomacy and relationship? So this thing doesn't affect me. I'm not rattled by it. Trump has the right to do what Trump is doing for America. Whether anybody else likes it, do it for your country.
All right. Now let's have Professor Bodomo's final thoughts in 1 minute, please. We're about to wrap up.
Okay, my final thoughts. That first of all, I thank you, Ms. Osman, and I thank News Central TV, and I thank my fellow panelists for all these wonderful, ideas and opinions. Yes, my final thoughts. I'll go back to my first thoughts. That first of all, to address this issue now, and this is not going to be the last issue. Other countries are going to do this to us. We may even think that the next president may be better than Trump, and he could also do this to us. So the only solution is to, unite as a continent, to unite as Africa and build a better Africa. That's all. We don't need to talk much. We don't need to talk much. So I kind of disagree with anybody who kind of tries to play down.
All right. Sadly, we actually have to wrap up. So sorry for that. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and for speaking on this. You all spoke very well, and we all appreciate your experts' opinion.